WorldMag.com presents Marvin Olasky, editor-in-chief of World Magazine and author of more than 20 books. The Walter Cronkite of Bibles is dead, says editor-in-chief of World Magazine. In this interview, Marvin discusses how Walter Cronkite relates to the New International Version Bible. You begin the column with a quote by President Lyndon Johnson, where he famously said, "If I've lost Cronkite, I've lost America." Can you explain that?
Well, our older listeners will remember Walter Cronkite. He was a journalist, CBS News anchor, repeatedly cited in opinion polls as, quote, the most trusted man in America. And he really was. He was trusted. He was important. He ended his broadcast with, "And that's the way it is." And few people doubted that. He was so significant that when he turned against the Vietnam War in 1968, President Lyndon Johnson told an aide, "If I've lost Cronkite, I've lost America." So one journalist had a lot of power in those days. There were only 3 television networks, and there was the evening news, and people turned into that to get the news, and that was pretty much it. Now, though, we learn what's happening from Fox, from CNN, talk radio, blogs, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, and I don't think any of us really believe that any journalist knows that's the way it is.
As readers try to discern the way it is or try to discover the truth, how does that relate to the New International Version? And could you provide a little background history on that?
The New International Version was the Walter Cronkite of Bibles. At the time, World in 1997 started reporting about it when Zondervan Publishing Company decided to make the New International Version gender neutral. At that point, the NIV, the most trusted Bible in America, had slightly over a 50% market share. All churches, all Christians all over the place. Over half of them reading the NIV. But then Zondervan, when it wanted to make that change, it wanted to get rid of man, words like man, he, brothers, and so forth. A lot of evangelicals felt betrayed. There was a small committee that secretly made changes, and those changes particularly appealed to feminists, getting rid of man and he and brothers and so forth. And at World, we called the new translation the Stealth Bible, and that designation stuck to it.
What can you tell me about the publication, today's New International Version?
Well, sure. There was a big controversy in 1997 when World broke that story, and then all sorts of other people got involved. Pastors, Jim Dobson, Jerry Falwell, lots of people. And it was a blaze, and Zondervan was forced to give up its plans for several years, and it pledged to maintain the NIV as it was. And a few years later, Zondervan decided to, continue publishing the NIV, but add a gender-neutral TNIV, today's New International Version. Zondervan tried to market it. It was a huge flop. Zondervan does not reveal the overall stats, but its Bible market share is at least half, probably less than half, when it was in 1997. So it's dropped a lot, and there are new competing translations. The most notable one probably Crossway's English Standard Version. Broadman and Holman have a Holman Bible. The New American Standard Bible still hanging in there as a word-by-word translation. So you have all these different translations. You don't have any one Bible that has such a huge market share anymore. So Walter Cronkite is gone. The Walter Cronkite of Bibles is dead. You had mentioned in your article about the Council of Biblical Manhood and Womanhood. What did they have to say about the Stealth Bible? Well, the Council on Biblical Manhood and Womanhood probably took the lead among people who know the original languages, who are very good exegeters. That council took the lead on condemning the NIV translation, the retranslation of it, and then also today's New International Version, because the Bible talks about men and women. It doesn't talk just about persons. The words that's translated. The Bible often says, as in Psalm 1, for example, in the NIV, "Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked." That doesn't mean a woman is not blessed when she follows God. No, but man stands for both men and women, and that's the word. That's the word in Hebrew. That's the way it's been translated, and to decide to change that is like trying to edit God. Basically, these are God's inspired writers, and if we believe in plenary inspiration, then we're going to exegete the words. We're going to explain to congregations, perhaps in case anyone has any doubt, that man stands for both men and women. But we're not going to change it because that's thinking we're smarter than God.
In your article, you mentioned a blogger by the name of John Dyer. Can you tell me a little bit more about what he discovered?
Right, yeah, and so let me talk a little bit about the new changes. The Zondervan released online a new NIV, spent a year preparing the way, and this was very different from 1997. And I want to give Zondervan credit, and Mo Gherkins, who is the CEO of Zondervan, I want to give her credit for this time being open about the plans. This time the Committee on Bible Translation, which is affiliated with Zondervan, reached out to critics, solicited their input. And the result, better process, and the Council on Biblical Manhood and Womanhood praised, quote here, significant improvements, end quote, in what was in the TNIV. So this new NIV is better than today's New International Version. The process was better, the results are better, and so there's not a whole lot of agitation about it this time as compared to 1997. And partly it's because the Walter Cronkite of Bibles is dead. It's not that important anymore. But partly it's also because, they did a better job with it. And right now you have 7,000 different Bible editions, and much as in television, Walter Cronkite. No one just waits for the CBS Evening News to find out what's happening. So here, no one's sitting around really waiting for the NIV in that sense to be retranslated. People read e-Bibles on computers, on Kindles, on iPads. Blogger John Dyer did an analysis of the new NIV, which will hit bookstores in March. He found that 91% of the words in the new NIV are unchanged from the old version. Still some of the same problems. Some of the words removed, he, his, or him, which again, if you say person, that's not a terrible thing. Man or men, fathers, forefathers, brothers. These are removed thousands of times. He, his, or him, 2,700 times removed, according to John Dyer's analysis. Man or men 1,600 times, fathers, forefathers, or brothers 500 times. That's not something I like particularly. As long as you keep the singular, it's not wholly objectionable, and I could go into that more if we have time. But it's not a big deal anymore. Here I'm a journalist saying this story is not a big deal, but certainly compared to 1997, it isn't. Because the Walter Cronkite of Bibles is dead. No one pays all that much attention to any one particular Bible translation anymore.
There are some line-by-line comparisons in your article, specifically Psalm 1 and some other sources. Can you share more about that?
Oh, sure. Yeah, this was one of the criticisms that a lot of people, including me, had of today's New International Version and the attempt back in 1997 to change the NIV. Psalm 1 starts out. Blessed in the old NIV translation, blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, and so forth. Because the English language is constructed, a person has to be a he or a she. A person cannot be an it. So you don't have a neutral word in English as you have in some language to refer to people. So the translators in 1997 and the today's New International Version translators did not want to have blessed is the man. So they changed it to blessed are they. And that really changes the meaning of it, because you think blessed is the man, you think of one individual, perhaps all alone, standing up against a crowd. It's kind of like our Western movies with heroes being willing to stand up for what's right, even if there's a mob against you. You change it to blessed are they, it becomes a collective rather than an individual thing. So it changes the meaning. Now, this new NIV still doesn't have blessed is the man, it has blessed is the one who does not walk. And that's a lot better than saying blessed are they. Doesn't really change the meaning of it. It's nothing I particularly want to go to war over. Some other things. There are other times where they make changes from individual to collective. Psalm 146 verse 5 is an example of that. If anyone wants to go check it, 146:5. There's one retranslated verse that's gotten a lot of criticism. This is 1 Timothy 2:12. The Council on Biblical Manhood and Womanhood notes that virtually every translation, whether traditional or modern, has Paul writing that in church, a woman is not to have or exercise authority over a man. And those are the key translation words here, exercise authority. The new NIV has assume authority. And the CBMW, Council on Biblical Manhood and Womanhood, And some other critics, they argue that readers may conclude that women can be pastors as long as they don't engage in a power grab. And this gets into some nuances and so forth, but if anyone wants to check it out, just look in various translations of 1 Timothy 2:12. And the question, of course, is, should women be pastors? And most Bible-believing churches say no. There's an argument that other churches make in favor of it, and that seems to me to be a weak argument, but that's the way it is. For God, for His reasons, seems to say in the Bible that pastors should be men. And I sometimes wonder about that because I've heard a lot of good Bible talks from women, but God is God, and He's the one in authority over us.
In your article, there's a second set of critiques, specifically Psalm 23 and some other passages. Could you explain that?
Psalm 23 has the famous metaphor about, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And for some reason, that just seems weird to me. The new NIV people want to change it to, even though I walk through the darkest valley. It doesn't ring. I love that, the valley of the shadow of death. So, ugh, to darkest valley in comparison. Now, the new NIV has mankind rather than humankind, and humankind always seemed to me to be a weird word. The translation, and I know, I mean, I've taught writing classes. I've already gotten emails from a bunch of writing teachers who don't like this at all. The translation, the new NIV mixes singulars and plurals. Here's an example from James chapter 3, verse 2. Anyone who is never at fault in what they say is perfect. Well, anyone is singular. The translators defend their choice by writing, well, lots of people these days use sentences like, quote, the person who eats too many hot dogs in too short a period of time is likely to become sick to their stomach. Again, you're mixing up singulars and plurals, and as a teacher of writing, that sentence makes me sick to my stomach.
There's a lot of criticism in this article regarding the New International Version. Are there any improvements or positive things to say?
Sure, yeah. In Esther chapter 5, verse 14, Haman builds not a gallows, but a pole on which to impale Mordecai, 75 feet high. That's how Persians killed their enemies. They impaled them. They didn't hang them. So that's historically accurate. Philippians 4:13, it now reads, well, the way it reads in the NIV currently, the old NIV is, I can do everything through Him who gives me strength. And so people may take that and run with it in all kinds of weird directions. It's actually, the verse before that refers to being content in all circumstances. And so the new translation, the new NIV, Philippians 4:13, now reads, I can do all this through Him who gives me strength. And that this refers to contentment in all circumstances. So I can be content in whatever I am. Even if I'm in prison, I can be content because God gives me strength. So that's an improvement, I think. The other thing was a translation that could lead people astray. And again, I'm critical of the new NIV. I like the English Standard Version a lot better. I like other versions better. I like the old NIV better. But I want to give Mo Gherkins, the CEO of Zondervan, she deserves credit. The process has improved. And now I hope that she'll make sure that the old NIV stays in print so its fans can replace worn-out copies.
Thank you for listening to a Marvin Olasky podcast presented by WorldMag.com.